I'll welcome back Janet Lynn and Anita Moore and Ben Verkaic, and we're just going to have a very casual conversation. Anita, I'm going to start with you, and everyone else will get the same question. So hopefully you won't repeat each other's answers, but that's okay because it might be the same thing. Did you always plan on being involved in municipal politics, and what was it that finally led you to putting your name forward?
Thank you, Margaret. Thank you for inviting me to your webinar, and thanks to all who have joined and to Kathleen Wynne. That was very inspiring. Um, no, I, like a lot of people, started as a volunteer in my community, and we live in a very rural space with a little community hall. And I used to volunteer at the hall. My husband volunteered with the ice rink, the outdoor rink, and we did that for several years while our children were young. And then a mayor, that was the mayor at the time, approached me and he said, "You're on the CRA, which is a community recreation association that we had, a little board of 4 people that made all of the recreation happen." And he said, "I think you should run for council." And I said, "No, I don't think so. I didn't know anything about it." And he said, "Well, why don't you join the Committee of Adjustments first?" And so that's what I did. And he said, "You'll learn a lot. You'll learn all about planning policy, and you'll learn about sort of all the challenges and variances, and most importantly, the language, the municipal language, because that takes some time to learn." So that's what I did. I applied to be on the Committee of Adjustments first, and I did that for 4 years. And then sort of organically, I applied for council or ran for council, sorry, after that. And I was successful, and then I did it again, and I was successful again. So here I am 12 years later.
So what was that little nudge that turned you from committee of adjustment to, yeah, I think I can do this?
I suppose it wasn't so foreign. You know, I had learned the language, I had learned the players. Sort of, you have regular folks that come to council for applications, your local developers or your local farmers, for instance. And the elections rolled around, and I thought my counselor was retiring, and so it left a space unfulfilled. So there was 4 of us that put our names in, and I was successful.
The rest is history, as they say.
Yes, yeah.
I'll go to you, Ben, next with the same questions. And Janet Lynn, your perspectives. Did you always plan on being in municipal politics, and what was that nudge?
Sure. No, I never planned it really. I always considered myself an introvert and not very a great public speaker, and so I wasn't really thinking of running. But I've always been interested in politics. I even took political science 101 as an elective in university, and I've always followed federal, provincial, municipal politics. Even when I was a teenager, I'd watch the those federal leadership races where they would all be in a big arena and they would all vote and the bottom one would fall out and they would endorse another candidate. They don't do that anymore. But yeah, and then life happens. I was working full time, commuting to Toronto, raising 3 children, and also volunteering in the community. So there would never have been enough time to be in public office. But in 2022, I was 59 and I was transitioning between jobs. And I'd been in manufacturing for 35 years and I was tired of it. And so I was looking for something else to do. And so I decided to run for council. And the nudge for that was I was on the town's Economic Development Advisory Committee from 2018 to 2022. And I kind of gained a little insight into what the existing councillors at that time, what their positions were on growth and the preservation of farmland. And the incumbent in my mostly rural ward actually didn't live in the ward. He lived in town. And the mayor, Rob Keffer, and another councillor actually did live in my ward, but they were both dairy farmers and they were both retiring. So I was very concerned, and I knew there was a councillor running who was very pro-growth and pro-developer. So because of that concern, I decided to run. And that coupled with finally deciding to do something different than manufacturing, I ran for office.
Well, this is great. I think we're starting to pick up a thing that nobody really has this plan, but then life has. What is that, Beatles? life is what happens when you're busy making other plans, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
Janet Lynn, did you have the same sort of experience with always wanting, or do you always aspire to be a municipal politician?
No, definitely not. And in fact, when I was in university, so in my early 20s, I actively avoided politics. Like I was a compulsive newspaper reader, but I would skip all of that because I found it so confusing. And then I was a teacher, and I got really involved in the civics organization, CIVIX, which they run parallel votes for students, and they hold democracy boot camps. And I started to go to those because I've always been interested. I just didn't understand how it all worked. And that really changed my perspective. But I have to say, I think it started very early. And my dad used to take me to city council meetings. We had a market stall when I was 10, and there were issues to do with the market that had come up. So my dad took me to several meetings, and I think that was always there in the back of my mind because I was fascinated with the process, fascinated with the agendas, and really got a chance to see how local decision making happened. But I did run federally, and didn't find that partisan experience to be a good fit for me. And so really came back to municipal politics as I was facing retirement. Um, I've always been pretty involved in the community, mostly in my arts community, but various aspects of the community. And I was just looking for a way to give back. I wouldn't say there was a particular issue that tipped me over. It was more that I felt that it was time with facing retirement and not wanting to sit, which doesn't come easily to me. Um, and so it just seemed like a natural conclusion. A lot of things led me to that point.
Mm. Well, I appreciate all of your perspectives because I think there's this myth about people that they think there's some calling you get when you're 6 years old and you're like, I'm going to be the mayor someday. The more that we do community organizing, and like I said, we have groups across the county, and you talk to these people that are very smart with it, have passion, have care and concern. And they're like, well, that's not for me because I don't like politics, or that's not for me because I don't know how to do this. And I'm like, oh, all three of your stories have shown that, sometimes it's just about finding the next part that's right for you. It didn't start off with a decree from the mountaintop that you're that you're supposed to be there, which makes me think about when people are thinking about, well, I could never do that, because they think there's a special type, if you will. And I think all three of you presented that there is no type. It's everybody comes to it for their reasons. But I want to kind of bust the mythology of the type that makes a good politician. And I'd like to actually talk more about it. What are the characteristics that people would need to have to be effective at the municipal level, whether that means working with council as on committees or as a regular citizen or as a council member. So I'll start with you, Ben, this time. What kind of characteristics have you found are really important for working at this level?
Okay, so I think there's three key traits, and I'll list them out. Good character, some skill and experience, and a passionate desire for to put in the effort that it takes. So good character, I think you need to be honest and have integrity and have a desire to help others. You have to be open-minded, understand other viewpoints, but also have your convictions. Uh, so that those things are important. The next thing, skill and experience. I think you need to be able to read and absorb a lot of information. Some of these agendas are 550 pages long, and you have to know what to read and discern what's important. You have to have good time management. You have to figure out how things get done pretty quickly. So you have to figure out, well, how do I interact with staff? How do I, I have a resident that has a concern. How do I put that, get something, the problem solved? And you have to be a good listener. You have to work well with others. You have to be able to compromise and make consensus. And you also have to be able to accept criticism. You have to have a pretty thick skin because not everyone will agree with you. And some people are pretty passionate about their viewpoints. And then the third thing is passion. You have to have a desire. The pay is low, the work is hard, and sometimes it's thankless, but you have to have a passion, a desire for your community and for helping others.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The Kathleen may mention it later, but one of the things she said to me in a conversation a while ago was, it's not the worst thing in the world to be the most hated person. I was like, what? But just this idea of like, to your point about the thick skin. But if you have and similar, I'm not in politics, but I work in parallel kind of world. And, there's lots of people that really dislike things that I do or say. And
Yeah.
okay, well, if you have the internal guidance about why you're doing it and you can come back to a North Star, if you will, then it makes the other stuff easier. Janet Lynn, we'll go to you next and we'll finish with Anita. What about you for characteristics?
A lot of what Ben said really resonated. And really this idea that you really have to not take things personally, and you have to be able to come to terms with the fact that your job will never be finished and you will never please everyone. And I said the same thing about teaching. It's very much the same. You really have to know that going in. And along with that comes setting some pretty firm boundaries for yourself. And that can change over time too. But because you're never finished, you really have to figure out what works for you in terms of time management, when you're working, when you're not, decide what your breaks look like. Is it integrated into everything? Do you have times that you're not available? And it has to be really what works for you. And as I say, that will change over time, but you have to guard your mental health pretty strongly and have some good awareness of that. And just have to figure out what works for you. I think the other thing is you just really need to be authentic. And as Ben said, of good character. But I think a lot of that is just being really, really true to yourself and being willing to be a little bit vulnerable even. And I just think that's the best way to lead. And it intersects with that passion, right? You are passionate about your community. You're passionate about certain issues. That's the authenticity. That's what drives you. And that's how you connect with people. And finally, just do the work. Like it's a lot. This is again something I've really had to figure out over time is, when I'm going through my email, am I answering that right away? Am I setting it aside for later? You have to figure out systems that work for you. And that is also ongoing. But you have to be really willing to put in the work, to read the agendas, to do your research, to not just cover things at a surface level. The community, when they elect you, they expect you to do that. And it's a big expectation, but you really have to live up to it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I liked your part about the boundaries piece, because us in the not-for-profit world or in the community organizing world, sometimes we assume our passion is going to just keep us going and going and going and going. Mm-hmm. Then you get to a point where you have burnt yourself out because to your point, the work is never done. And you're like, just one more all-nighter, one more meeting, one more whatever, we'll fix it. And some of you may know Jeff Menag, who was the former chief of Beausoleil, and he said to me, he's like, you know, when you approach your life, think about you're putting a drop into a pond and you think your drop is the end of it, but you never actually can see the ripples. You'll never get to see how far the ripples go. And so your work will never be done because you'll never actually get to see where that decision leads to. And I was a little bit younger. I was like, what? What do you mean? I have a plan, I have an agenda, it gets done, and I'm done. Like, so I can appreciate all of that. So Anita, we put you on the tough spot because you might, maybe that's already been said, but what are your reflections on this piece?
No, I appreciate and agree with everything that has been said. I would like to add that in today's climate on councils, sometimes just knowing how to keep your composure will take you a long way. You must keep your composure. And I don't say that just for council and moving council meetings along, but it is for your residents too. They didn't elect people to be combative, and you can be passionate without being combative. So I always remain respectful. I think that's important. But the composure, and I think most importantly, is that we are all good listeners. Sometimes, and I've learned over the years that residents really just want to be heard. They understand that we can't always fix the problem. We can't always make it right, but we can listen and we can be empathetic. And because in some cases, things are tough on residents. They're hard. Um, in this world of social media, it's particularly hard for people that sit on council as well as the people that are online, which keyboard warriors that we've all had to deal with. Again, who I'm not sure who mentioned mental health, maybe Janet Lynn, you did, but mental health is incredibly important in protecting your mental health. I come from a healthcare background. I'm a registered nurse and I still work full time. And I'm seeing the decline in people's mental health and, across the board. So we do need to find ways to protect ourselves. And I would also say learning how to compromise. We are on uneven numbered councils for a reason. And so, some will say you're aligned with those ones, but you're not aligned with these ones. And quite honestly, I didn't know anybody in this council before we started, and things happen organically. You make your decisions based on what you know best and what your instincts are. That's what you have to rely on. I often say that there's no resume for this position. People apply and it doesn't, you don't hand in your resume and be interviewed by an HR person. So you're going to get all walks of life, all different experiences and different ages, and just appreciate the differences.
And I like your point about the composure, because even in a community organizer role, I might have been a little bit more hot-headed when I was younger, but I'm old now. So I'm older and wiser now. But there is an importance of, as you were saying, sometimes the issue that's coming before council is something that was set 15 years ago, right? And now it's just becoming to the point where people are like, what is going on here? This isn't how, and I feel bad for those situations, but also there's only, and I'm not trying to make excuses for councils. I've just seen both sides. It's like the Joni Mitchell song. I've seen it from both sides now, where it can be very difficult for councils. And sometimes councils need a little bit more backbone than what they have. And sometimes they don't. It depends on the individual council and the issue. But I can tell people for free that if you go in as a hothead, yelling and screaming and swearing and ad hominem attacks, whatever validity you had to your concern is immediately put in a different spot now. So your best bet is to go in to do your research, understand the issue, go in as a person first, talk to another person as a person. And I think that goes, some councillors don't do that. Some residents don't do that. And I think if we could learn to keep our composure and really try to work together, because I don't believe anybody runs for council to try and just mess things up. They all have their own idea about what would be best for the community. Sometimes that jives with a lot of people, sometimes it doesn't, but nobody goes on there to make things worse, right? So just trying to keep the humanity of things. Janet Lynn, so just keep in mind if you have questions for our panel that's about, what kind of characteristics, what specific things that came up tonight that you might find interesting or that you need a little bit more information about, then feel free to put that in the chat. Janet Lynn, you're going to start this one. And we've talked a bit about characteristics, and we've talked a little bit about what nudged each of you into this space. But for those that are listening, watching, what advice now? Let's keep in mind that not everybody on here is running for council, right? But there's almost everybody on here wants to somehow get involved in their community. So what advice would you have for people that are considering running, and what advice would you have for people that just want to get more involved in their community? So it's a two-parter, if you don't mind.
Sure, no problem. For people considering running, your municipal website is such a great source of information. And before you make any decisions, and after, if you do decide to run, make sure that you're going onto that website and you really understand what the different departments are, what it is that they do, the major projects that are happening, things that are in process, if it's official plans or anything of that sort. Do the research. I can't believe I just said do your own research, but do the actual research. And I would also say really access, there's some excellent resources out there. Association of Municipalities of Ontario has their Healthy Democracy Project. They've launched some fantastic resources. Lead Where You Live is the municipal one, but there's all kinds of ones about leading with respect. And so just learn as much as you can, I think would be my best advice for people considering running. And as far as getting involved in the community, a little bit of the same, because guaranteed there is something in your community that aligns with your passions, and those are your people, and that's where you can make a difference and get engaged in democracy. And there's actually a project I used to do with my grade fives, is to figure out what's the thing that you're really excited about. And then what could you do to engage in democracy? Is there a group you can join? Is there some festival you can volunteer for? Is there somebody you can contact to learn more? All of those are engaging in democracy, and all of them improve our communities. And so find that thing that you are really passionate about, find your people, and then figure out how you can fit in there and make change.
Mm-hmm. And I can't speak from a counselor point of view, but I like what you said about finding your people, because when I left corporate education, I was a trained teacher myself at one point, and then I was in corporate education and had a job where I was commuting every day to Toronto. I was like, can't do that anymore. And so when I got into the environmental work, which kind of found me the same way municipal politics found all of you, not planned, I had no big script to follow. It found me. But when I was telling people about, I think this is what I want to do, and I was just going as a volunteer, keep in mind, they were like, oh, you're going to be so lonely. It's going to be so hard. And you're going to just be so sad because it's just such a tough life. And I'll tell you, I have met my people through this work. And I know that at least one or two of my counselors that I'm closer with have said, it's, you get to meet people that really understand what you care about too. So it's not all bad. So I like that you said that. So Anita, and then Ben, you get to wrap it up with what advice you'd give. Anita?
I would say that if you have a desire to make a difference, if you have a burning desire to make a difference in your community, then you're already there. I think, we all come, I think, with a desire to do good work, do the hard work, but to make a difference. And I know that we might see something that's it could be a pothole, it could be a road, or maybe a repair that needs to be done on a building, and we're going to bring that forward and make a difference in that way, or we're going to make a difference for our residents. So I would say look around your community. Ours are what I call ours as a community, small communities. So I have many, and each one has its own idiosyncrasy. So you have to figure out what is the idiosyncrasy in that little community, what is important. We are a large agricultural community too, which comes with also different ideals and values. So get to know your little pockets and what's important, and figure out how you can make a difference.
Thanks. And Ben, what advice would you have for people considering running or getting more involved in their community?
Sure. Okay. So I guess the first thing is realize that the pay is low, the efforts and the time commitment is high to do a very good job at being a counselor. And with that in mind, make sure you're able to balance all of this with your personal life and whatever career you have. So talk to your family. Make sure that they're on board. Talk to you if you're working at a place, make sure that that's going to work. So do those key things. But the most important thing is you should be involved in your community. You should know people in the community. You should have been volunteering, or as another one mentioned, they went on the committee of adjustment. I was on the economic development advisory committee. So do those first steps first. I was thinking today, if I moved to a town 500 kilometers away, and I don't think I would put my name for council. I think I would spend some time getting to know the community.
Yep, for sure. There's we're just about to start the Q&A, so this will be just a really short thing, but could each of you give one short sentence about why municipal politics matters to you? You got like a 30-second why it matters to you, and we'll start with Nita, then we'll go to Janet Lynn, then we'll go to
I am probably a profound helper. I probably have some issues with that. So I I feel a need. I'm a nurse, like I said, so I feel the need to help everybody. And so I think it's kind of a natural fit. But I would just say that municipal politics for me has been so incredibly rewarding. And I've met the most fantastic people, and I've traveled, and although it's tough, and the time commitment, if you do work full time, I put in probably an extra 20 hours a week doing this. So know that going in, but it is the most rewarding thing that I've done.
Excellent. Janet Lynn, what would be your 30-second pitch for why municipal politics matters to you?
I agree. Most rewarding and simultaneously most challenging thing that I've ever done. And I think it goes right back to what Kathleen said, that municipal politics is the order of government that really impacts people's lives. And it sounds cliche, but community is really important to me. And I really love my community. And it's just an opportunity not only to get really engaged, but to give back and to listen and to learn and to try to make positive change.
Excellent. Ben?
Well, they said everything I was going to say, but besides being the most impactful, it's also the most democratic. We don't have parties. Now, the only thing that's taken away from that democratic level is strong mayor powers, which I'm totally opposed to, but we'll work around that. It's also the most impactful in what your town will look like in 25 years. Like we're setting the future for the town, and I think that's where we make a big difference.
Great, excellent. So before we go to the Q&A, I'll welcome Kathleen back. Before we go to Q&A, I just want to let people know that our next session is on May 14th. And that session, we have 3 new speakers. Kathleen will be joining us again to do her same kind of role. She's going to start off with some things. And that one is where we're going to be talking a little bit more about what you need to do, how to get started, how to build some things. Those are the questions. Tonight was really just about helping people see that people that land in municipal politics aren't a certain type or a certain breed. They're just people that care, and somehow we're nudged into that space. And I think that's probably true of trustees and community organizers. There probably wasn't a grand master plan that everybody followed to get there. There was no pedigree. It just usually came from a place of genuine care and concern. So after tonight's webinar, we will be posting this recording on YouTube. I'll be sending it out to all the registrants, and then we'll also include our Ready to Run guide, which will help you kind of go through the first part kind of correlates to the topics we're talking about tonight, about your network, about, what kind of things do you need to think about with your community, and what do you already know about it, to help you kind of determine if running is right for you, or if it's right for somebody else, where you would go in the next one. And then we'll proceed like that. So that's what's coming next. We had a few questions, and one was about how did you find, and I'll just open this up. So whoever would like to take it, or multiple people, that's fine. How did you form your first team? Anybody like to go ahead, Anita?
Family.
You birthed them.
Family and friends. And yes, bought them all t-shirts and said, you have no choice.
Okay.
I joke, but that's
No,
true.
no, I know.
But you have to start, you have to get buy-in from your family, because this is a commitment that they are all participating in, whether they realize that at first or not. So your family has to be, in with you 100%. And we just build connections from there.
Okay. Anybody else have some advice about how they built their first team beyond relying on the kindness of family and close friends?
My first team was literally myself and one former councillor who sometimes dragged me by the ear to door knock. And it's very different this time around because it's a whole different level with running for mayor. And it has, I'm not going to lie, it has been challenging. It continues to be challenging. It's kind of figuring things out as you go along, frankly. Finding a campaign manager as such has been challenging in our area. If people have the skills, they don't have the time. And if they have the time, they don't have the skills. So a team approach is very much where it's at. But I think my biggest advice would be to just trust the process, access the resources that you can, so you know kind of what roles you really need. Like what are the things that you can't handle, and who do you know that can maybe fit into those roles. And I think I've been blessed that people are kind of coming out of the woodwork, and I think for the most part that happens, that you trust the process, and it will come together.
Absolutely, that makes sense. What about, and like I said, we will be covering these kind of topics much more in depth next session with different, but someone asked about tips on fundraising, budgeting and reporting. I think that probably go with what your municipal resources say, but what about for fundraising, Ben or Kathleen?
I would say be careful, I think, anyways. I've seen some councillors' websites go, just click on this button and donate. And I don't know if you want open donations because that you have to report all that. But running for ward councillor wasn't that expensive, so I just had some donations from family. So it's up to you how you want to do it. Budgeting and reporting. Yeah, so you got to go out and get pricing for your signs, for your literature, do all that. Do all your homework first before you start spending any money. And just keep track of everything. You got to write it down. I had a spreadsheet, and I just every day I would update it and just keep track of everything that's coming in and keeping out. And of course, you have to have a separate bank account, so that takes care of itself too.
Yeah. Kathleen, do you have anything to add to
Yeah,
that?
I want to combine the first question and the second question because I think there are, they're concentric circles. You don't need 100 people. You need a few people. And one of the people you need, to Ben's point, is somebody who's going to take the lead on fundraising. Now, it's hard to be the candidate and keep track of all the things that Ben was talking about. And I think that's when politicians can get into trouble. And so, pretty early on, if you can identify somebody in your circle, either the inner circle or the next circle, who will take the lead and will read all the rules and make sure that you don't step over any lines, that can be really important. And it doesn't have to be a chartered accountant, it can be just somebody who's got an affinity for that or is willing to learn. And also don't rule out young people, because young people can be a huge asset to a campaign. And if there's a young person who's got a good financial brain, that may be the person who you want. You're going to have lists. I mean, that's the other tip on fundraising. You need to have lists, and you need to understand that if you don't have people who've got deep pockets, getting a lot of people to give a little bit of money is really the best way to fundraise, I think, because it means you're actually involving more people, and that creates a network.
Mm-hmm. And for many of the campaigns that happen around Simcoe County, at least, the total cost might be, a few $1,000s or something. So we're not asking people to raise, $250,000 to run something. That I recognize that for some people that's a lot of money and out of reach, and so they're going to have to fundraise a lot of that. But I don't want to leave people with the impression that mayoral candidates, especially in urban areas, can be a lot more expensive, for sure. But yeah, I don't want to leave people with the impression that it's unreachable, and we're talking in six figures here that you're going to have to reach, because that's not the case.
Margaret, that's a really important point, because I think one of the things that really puts people off, and often puts a lot of women off politics, is that they feel that they don't have access to people with money. And my experience has been, because I'm not wealthy and I didn't come from a wealthy community. But where there's energy and commitment and a good team, money will come. It may come in small amounts, but it will come. And so don't let that put you off. Somebody has to focus on it, but don't let it put you off trying.
Mm-hmm. Anything, Janet Lynn or Anita, you'd like to add?
If I could just add too, and you brought up a good point about the volunteers, to the question. I used a last campaign a lot of high school students who needed volunteer hours.
Yeah.
And so I had a large group of volunteer high school students who delivered literature, and I signed off on their hours, and they were fantastic. They wanted to learn. They had no idea who I was or what what we were doing, but it was a great lesson in civics for them. And they got involved and got excited. I gave them all t-shirts, and it was a thing. So that's an untapped resource that I don't tell a lot of people. Now I've told all
Now
of
you've told
everybody.
tons. The whole world knows, Anita. The millions of people that are going to watch this are now going to know your strategy.
That's true. Genius.
The other question, and I'm going to, Matthias has one, I'm going to try to condense it a little bit, was what about if you have an issue that, and I'm going to take this from a perspective of someone who's running, an issue that you really are concerned about, but you're not really seeing addressed by council. You want to kind of incorporate it into your community work or into your platform. It's something that doesn't seem to be very popular or priority. Any tips on how to manage those sorts of things? I've stumped everybody all at once.
Well, I wanted to, just on that particular issue, Matthias has raised the issue of family friend caregivers he's advocating for. I think one of the things you can do is connect with an organization that is working on that issue. So there is a Canadian Center for Caregiving Excellence that actually is just doing this, is advocating for caregivers of all different kinds in family settings. And so, and I mean, Margaret, the organization that you are the executive director of, so Simcoe County Greenbelt Coalition, people who are interested in advancing environmental issues, organizations like that can become part of the landscape in a municipal campaign. Organizations will run all candidates meetings. They can advance issues. So I think that is one thing to do if you're not directly involved in the electoral process. Other organizations can be of great assistance in that.
And I would just like to build on that part, Kathleen, is that if you're on this webinar and you're really still not sure whether you want to run for council, which is fine, or run as a trustee, which is fine, but you really are thinking about how to best use your time in this upcoming municipal election period. One, connect with organizations who might be running all candidates meetings, or connect with those community organizations that care about what you care about. And also dig into your municipality. All of the candidates that have been registered so far are listed. Start to contact them, start to connect with them, ask them the questions. What do you care about? Do they care about the same thing? And if you have 5 hours a week to help out, I'm sure that they would love it. For those of you that are thinking about running, keep in mind August 21st is your deadline, and you have to pre-arrange an appointment with your clerk to register. So don't just, I've seen people online saying, I just showed up, and they were like, you can't just put in your name. And you're like, no, because you have to make an appointment. So you have to August 21st. And a lot of the things that Janet was talking about as far as mapping, what could you do, what could you not do, that's in our Ready to Run guide, which is just, again, more of for support, and we'll send that out. Any last words from the council, from the panel? Because I promised we would try to be done close to 8 o'clock, and we're a little bit over. Any last closing thoughts, anyone?
No, good luck.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think I would share something that I learned from another candidate, because I went through this time when I thought, am I crazy? Like, this is, it's a complicated, and you put yourself out there and you make yourself really vulnerable. And I heard another candidate say, I'm going to run a clean campaign that I can be proud of and put my best work into it. And then no matter the outcome, I am proud of it, and I'm going to enjoy it while I do it. And I thought, what a great attitude. Like, that's what I needed. That's what I needed to hear. And I've really leaned into that.
That's great. That's a good
I would say
Yeah.
knock on a lot of doors. You're going to be knock on as many doors as you can, because you're going to find out what the community wants that way, and get your message out too.
Yeah.
Because a billboard ad isn't going to do it. They want to meet you.
They want to know.
And can I just build on that? If somebody tells you this group of people doesn't vote, or people who live there don't vote, ignore that.
Yeah.
I lost that first election as school trustee because by 72 votes, because we were told that, people in apartment buildings on that side of the ward, they don't vote. And we didn't get into those apartment buildings. And I would have won that election if we had actually gone and seen those people. So just trust your gut on that.
Yeah, for sure. So same bat time, same bat channel next week, 7 p.m. If you have registered for this webinar, you're automatically registered for the entire series. So it'll be the same link, but I will be sending out invites closer to, as reminders closer to. And you'll hear from me in a couple of days with the recording, with the Ready to Run assets. For my panelists, thank you so much for taking some time. I know how busy you all are fighting the good fight for local democracy, and good luck for those of you that are running. And thank you for all of the people that attended. I hope you found this useful, and I'll see you back in a week.
Thank you.
Thank you for organizing.
Thank you.
Night, everybody.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
Good night.